Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's your boy Devvon in raw form, and welcome to another Help Me Devvon tutorial. And today, in this Help Me Devvon tutorial, I'll be showing you guys some pro tips on mixing your background vocals. Now, this song that I'm about to show you right now is one of my own songs. It's called Popular. Let's take a listen to the background vocals.
Yeah, 'cause you so damn popular. Girl, you got it, girl, you poppin'. Oh, I'm watching ya. So many just fighting for your love. I'm one of them, but baby, can I please get your attention? Yeah. Let's go OT. Oh, let's just.
Okay, so that's the song as far as the background vocals. And you can hear that that background vocal really complements that lead vocal. It's a support. It's not too overpowering, but it's just enough, and it's a great bed for the lead vocal to be supported by. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to ask you guys to comment, like, subscribe. Also, make sure at any time during the tutorial, you can visit helpmedevvon.com to get some of our templates, vocal chains, and presets to help support this channel. Now, back to the tutorial. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into individual steps. What I'm going to do is, and first and foremost is, I'm going to let you listen to these background vocals for how they stand. So let's listen to the background vocals in solo so you can get an idea of what they sound like. Check this out. Go here, solo this. Listen to these background vocals. So you can hear them. They're not absolutely perfect, but it's basically a four-part harmony. What do I mean when I say four-part harmony? Basically, it's sets of two that are singles that are all together. So basically, these two right here, which let me just take this off. These two right here are their own note. So listen closely to this. Watch. And then this other set is its own cadence as well. And so these four-part harmonies in sets of two are blended together to create that harmony. Now, for some of you, you knew that, and some of you just getting into the harmony stuff, this is just some information for you. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys as far as mixing this kind of stuff is how to attack the individual tracks themselves. So of course, there's a group thing that we're going to do as far as how we attack it, but there's also, or more importantly, there's a single way that you can attack each track first before you start doing any heavy processing. I'll show you exactly what that means. So now we're going to go to the actual tracks, and I'm going to move on over to here. So right here, when I say the individual tracks, I mean mid OD1 and mid OD2. If you don't know what that means mid overdub 1, mid overdub 2. So this is my mid part of my harmony. And this is the individual track that it actually resides on. Now, as you can see, there's an NLS channel, there's an auto-tune, there's an RVox, and a CLA 76. Now, what I explain to you is this. What I like to do with the individual tracks before there's any other processing that goes after it is, I like to basically get that thing tight. Think about it like this. When you're in the large format kind of studios and stuff like that, or just have the blessing to have a lot of equipment, a lot of times what you do is you'll compress those vocals in. Now, the benefit of compressing those vocals in is that you get a more concise vocal, one that isn't so quiet and loud and dynamic, but more or less tighter. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try and make sure that I compress those vocals individually first before I send them to any bus routing to actually do any processing. Because instead of having the left one that I'm panning that very quiet and the right one really loud, now I have a sound that's more cohesive between the both of them because I've compressed them both. So it just helps with your dynamics a little bit. It's as far as my experience in compressing both of those or the individual background tracks so that they're more cohesive, so that when you actually do some group processing, it's a lot better and it's a little bit more cohesive and tighter. Okay? Stay with me. I'll explain that group processing later down the line. So let's focus on this one single place right here. And the biggest takeaway, what I'll show you is the auto-tune. And the auto-tune, basically, I set it the same way that I set up my my lead vocal. So as you can see, I have a retune speed of 11, put it on legato. I've learned that legato just sounds a little bit better as far as if you're looking for a more natural sounding auto-tune sound. and I have my humanize at 18 just to clean it up just a little bit, and that's it as far as my auto-tune is concerned. Now my RVox is literally doing no processing whatsoever. The only thing it's doing is it's gating. The only thing I'm using this RVox for is to use it as a gate. So check this out. It's just helping me with tucking it as soon as it goes off so I can get rid of any noise or background information that comes through when there's no vocal present. This helps me a lot with avoiding buildup as far as that between the vocals. So I don't want so much of that buildup of any room noise because my room isn't as perfect. And I'm sure a lot of our rooms aren't perfect. And it helps me just kind of tame that down as it's in between those phrases of silence. Got me? Cool. So now what's really doing the heavy lifting is this plugin right here. And this is a CLA 76. And basically what I'm using this for is I'm using this to get a little bit of volume and just maybe compressing just slightly. Now, granted, I will warn you of this. You may not see so much compression on this vocal right now. And the reason why is because it's such a straight sound. It's not really something that is dynamic, that has cadences. It's really straight. So really what I was looking for was a little bit more volume as opposed to more compression. This is how you make better compression decisions. When you're looking at compression or when you're looking to do any compression at all, really you're doing it to bring the disparity between the loudest sound and the quietest sound closer together. So if you have a sound that's ooh, what's really the difference between the quietest sound and the loudest sound? There really isn't much difference. So do I need a ton of compression? No, because really there's no difference between the quietest sound and the loudest sound in between as far as that particular phrase is concerned. And that's basically what my harmonies were just oohs and ahs. So I don't even have much compression on this, just more or less a volume boost. So check this out. So let's take a look at what the compressor is doing. Got it. Now what I'm going to do is this, and you can see that's really not even compressing much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both of the compressors off. I'll play it without and I'll play it with. So this is without the compressors. This is me taking off all the processing. Now let's put both of them back on. Do you notice that I get a little bit more just volume out of the sheer phrase? And like I said, I didn't need much compression or didn't want to do too much compression because it's just a single phrase. I didn't have this dynamic ooh. It was just straight ooh and don't make fun of me. So that's why you don't see much compression. You just see more or less a volume boost from the CLA 76 as far as a compressor on the individual bus track. All right. The next thing I'm going to explain to you in this next step is called the routing. And when I say the routing, what do I mean? Well, if you come on over here and you look at my session, you'll notice this. You'll notice that for every 2 background vocals, there's a bus that comes right after it. So basically, high OD1, high OD2 is feeding the high bus. Mid OD1, mid OD2 is feeding the mid bus, etc., etc. Why am I doing this? The reason why I'm doing it is because it creates a more cohesive grouping for me to control the vocals. Now, as opposed to me putting a ton of plugins on the one vocal on the left, just like I'm putting on the right, now I can just group them together and basically affect them in their totality to have a more cohesive sound. So this is something I like to do a lot of times when it comes to my backgrounds, and I usually like to group them according to their notes, meaning, is this the high part of the harmony? So let's affect that by itself. Is this the mid part of the harmony? Let's group that and affect that by itself. Is this the low, etc. So that's what you're seeing as far as my routing. Now, how did I do this routing? I'll show you. If you're a beginner to this whole thing, I'll show it to you quickly. Basically, all I did was I said high OD1, high OD2. I went to bus, and what I did was I went all the way down to a bus, and I put them out to high, harm, high bus right here, and that's basically inputting right here on this side right here. Let me show you a better view. So basically, these two are going out and feeding into this bus right here, which thus allows us to have signal that is right here on this track from both of them. And you reserve and keep your pans as far as where you placed it in the stereo field. Now, granted, I'm a big fan of hard left, hard right. You could use that to your own advantage or choose how you would like to pan your stuff for yourself. So the next thing I want to show you guys is the bus processing. And basically with the bus processing, I'm taking the individual tracks that I've affected and I'm taking them and I'm grouping them into a singular place that I can affect them in its totality together. So basically that mid OD1 and mid OD2, I'm sending out, going to this bus, and I'm affecting them together in one singular place so that I can have full functionality and control over the entire harmony part as it is one. I'm going to show you my bus processing now. Okay, so with my bus processing, first thing I did was I added a little bit of this NLS channel. It is analog saturation emulation for you sticklers out there. And it's not doing much. It's just a really, really slight effect that it has on a vocal. And I feel like it just adds a little bit of a tone that I like. The big thing that I added was some EQ. Now, the first thing I did with this EQ, and I used two EQs in back-to-back, which you'll see in a second. For this F6 RTA, basically what I did was I rolled off a lot of the low end. You'll see that I pushed out a bunch of the 208 hertz range for some of that muddiness. You'll also see that I pulled out a good amount of the 314 hertz range, which gets rid of some of that boxiness for me sometime when it comes to that. Now, I like to typically roll off a little bit more than usual when it comes to background vocals. I like to leave more room for the lead vocal and things of that nature, and you're going to see that in my next EQ start. This is me just really getting rid of some problems that I heard in the vocal. I'll let you get a listen for it. You'll see that I took out a little bit of the 2,700 hertz range, a little bit of the 780 hertz range, and a little bit of that 469. So let's hear it before and after. Without. So the effect is very, very slight. What you'll notice is in this next one, you'll hear a big difference. So now we're looking at the SSL channel. And with this SSL channel, I want you to just look at it as an EQ. I didn't use the compressor section at all. I'm going to do it before and after. Let's listen to what it sounds like now. Without. You'll notice that it felt a lot more airy, it felt a lot more open, and it felt a lot lighter on your ear. This is on purpose, and I'm going to show you exactly the settings that I did. So basically what you'll see is I rolled off a bunch at the 300 hertz range, almost 9 dB. I rolled off a lot of low end on this vocal. And the reason why I roll off a lot of low end in a vocal, just to let you know, is because when it comes to the main vocal, I do want to differentiate the sonics and sound of the background vocal versus the lead vocal. It needs to sound different. It needs to stand out in its own way. So in order to make that lead vocal still feel like I am in control and lead, I like to roll off a lot of that low end on that background vocal so that it feels and sounds different. Now, this is just a thing to taste, and this is song by song basis. But for this particular song, this is something that I kind of try for most of the time and roll off a lot of that low end more than you would usually do on a lead vocal, just so it gives you a little bit more of an airier and edgier sound. Like I said, case by case basis. This doesn't go for every single song. The next thing I did was I took out some of that 890 hertz range, about 3.4 dB. The reason why I usually do that is because I feel like it adds, that particular range has a certain type of presence to it that I felt needed to just be pulled back. So I pulled some of that back. Next thing I did was take some of the 3.5 kilohertz out, just so I can make a little bit more room for the vocal as far as the lead is concerned. And then the biggest takeaway I want to give you guys is I boosted at 11,000 hertz, which is where I get that air from. And you'll see I boosted about 4.5 dB in that particular range. Now, the next thing I did was I added another compressor. Now, this compressor, I assure you, is probably not even doing anything. It's just there for a little bit of a volume boost. Let's take a listen. Now, let's take it off. Listen again. Now, you notice that when it was engaged, it felt a lot stronger. It felt like it was just just overall louder and just felt a lot stronger. And this is what adding no compression. This is just me using the emulation of the actual compressor to just give me a little bit more of a thicker and more bitier sound, which I noticed a lot with the Blackie version of the CLA 76, and just gave me a little bit of a volume boost. I said, all right, let's boost this volume up. Let's get this thing a little bit louder so that it can actually be blended in later on. So barely any compression, and I got it to sound like this already. Next thing I did was I added a C4 compressor. And what a C4 compressor is a multi-band compressor, of course. I'm sure some of you may have this already in your arsenal. And I'm going to show you what it's doing without first. Okay, so when you listen to that, you notice that it kind of tamed and tucked that low mid kind of stuff a lot more, and it allowed us to get a little bit more volume out of the vocal. I felt like as I was boosting it, what I heard was not that the overall vocal needed to be, group of vocals needed to be compressed, but more or less just that bottom side. And I said, I don't want that boominess to kind of come up, but I want more of that edgy, airy stuff to come up. So by compressing that low mid frequency, I was able to bring up the entire sound, and that allowed for more of that bitier, brighter kind of sound to come out for the background vocal. So this was my settings. So long story short, as you can see, it's really just the left side over here, which is right here, from the 40 hertz to the 588 hertz range. And you can see that I'm compressing it pretty well. I'll let you see how much compression. So I'm roughly getting about 3 dB of gain reduction in this particular range, from the 40 hertz to the 588 hertz range. And it's basically just helping me just to mitigate that low mid frequency, which is this right here. And as you can see, I have a pretty fast attack and a fast release. Now you could just go back to this video, you can screenshot this, take a look at it so you can get an understanding of my settings. But for the most part, this is the only region that was really affected in this process. Now to get on to some of the funkier stuff within this bus processing. So right here in the bus processing, what I use is a doubler 4. I'm gonna play it for you without the doubler 4 and with. Check this out. So when you listen to that, you notice that it feels a lot softer. It feels like it got the stereo image just kind of felt a little bit wider and a little bit more wobbly. It felt like it had a little bit more movement as opposed to just feeling, ooh, it felt like it's like, ooh, it feels kind of spacey, and it added these other voices to it to make it sound a little bit more full and soft. And now granted, I can turn the doubler 4 up just to kind of compensate for that volume loss that we had, but I liked the sound of it. I was cool with it. I was like, this sounds a lot nicer. It just felt softer, and it kind of felt like the middle information just kind of moved out the way just a little bit, which I want because that'll help me with my lead vocal in getting that to sit in place. And it has the idea, the feeling of it has more vocals than the just 2 now. It feels like I've added more vocals. So that's why I like to use a doubler. So basically I used a very, very basic setting in the plugin. It's called doubler 4 voices. Check this out. Punch that in and you're good to go. It's a really cool preset that I like to use on my background vocals. Next thing I did was I got this R comp, and this R comp is doing a very slight bit of compression, not even much. Check this out. So you can see it's just taking a slight piece. It's not much. It's just catching those ooh moments to kind of control them a little bit. And that's why I had that compressor there, just to catch those little tiny slight moments with the compression. Now, settings, I did a fast attack and a pretty fast release because I really wasn't looking for much compression. I just was looking to attack just those little small transient initial moments so that they don't pop out too much when you're listening to them. Now, the last thing I did on this particular processing as far as the bus is concerned was I took out some of the 2015 hertz range, or better yet, The 2 kilohertz range. Why did I take out some of the 2 kilohertz range? Well, that's the range where mostly our vocal presence resides. So for me, when I said to my vocal, when I looked at my lead vocal, I heard it in comparison to the backgrounds. And I said, I want to kind of pull a little bit more attention away from those backgrounds because I want those to really sit as a guide or a bed. I want them to support the lead vocal, not overpower it or outshine it. So that's why I took out a little bit of that 2K frequency just so I can get a little bit more presence for the lead vocal to live. That's the only reason I did that. Once again, that's case by case for this particular song. I just pulled a little bit of that out because I wanted the background vocals just to have a little bit less precedent in the mix, okay? All right. And that was the last thing I did for my bus processing. Now, the next thing that I did for my background vocals was the effects processing. When I say effects processing, I'm referring to reverbs, delays, and phasers and flanges and things of that type of family. And basically what I use this for is to create texture, to create a more realistic sound. And the reason why I say a more realistic sound is because when it comes to, making things feel believable, reverbs and delays can help you accomplish those types of spaces. If you want a vocal to feel more lush, a nice reverb with a long tail can help it feel that way. So this is how we create the feeling, is through the effects processing, okay? Okay. So, as you can see, this is our effects processing. What I'm running is I'm running a short verb, a long verb, a doubler, and a fourth delay. You can totally ignore this right here. I'll explain that in another tutorial another day, but don't worry about this at all. So this is a short verb, a long verb, a doubler, and a fourth. My short verb is feeding, and let me take all this stuff off. My short verb is feeding this right here, which is a pro R, and it's a plate verb, long story short. I'm using it as a plate in a sense because I'm using it with a very, very short reverb time. Now, granted, the preset I have here is vocal clear space, but for the most part, when it comes to my plate verbs or my short verbs, I like to use them because they add a little bit of a stereo feel to your vocal without making it feel so obvious, if that makes any sense, or affecting the sound that you've created. So basically, I like to use plate verbs to give me more of a stereo feel for my vocal. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this short verb and I'm going to boost it up, and I want you to see how it feels, okay? So this is my short verb right here. One sec. And let's bring it down, and I'll bring it up, and listen to how much it affects the vocal as we bring it up. Okay, so you hear it and you notice this like metallic kind of feeling, and it adds somewhat of a stereo feel to the vocal, and it also feels like it adds a little bit of a tail. And I like this sound because it makes it feel like it sits higher up in the mix. And that's why I like to use plate verbs even on my lead vocals, because it just adds a little bit more of a stereo feeling, and puts the vocals in a particular place that feels a little bit more realistic in the song. All right, so that was basically my short verb. The next thing it's feeding is my long verb, and my long verb, which let's turn it on. My long verb is also feeding a Pro R, but it's using a preset called Cathedral 1. And long story short, I'm going to put this way down, and then I'm pull it up and let you get an idea of what it's doing. So way down first. So what it's helping me create is, it's helping me create this wonderful tail on the actual background vocals, and it makes the vocals feel a lot more ghosty and mystical and impressive. And that's why I like to use long verbs when it comes to background vocals from time to time, if I'm looking for that more ghostly and smooth kind of sound, because it adds that lush tail. Now, what are my settings? Like I told you, I use the Cathedral 1, and you'll see right here that my space is 3.07. That's the particular space or timing as far as the reverb is concerned that I found nice. I'm really a big fan of Pro R's reverb because it allows me to do things like setting the distance to close, far. It allows me in a simple way to kind of fine tune my reverb. Dark to bright, I can make the reverb darker, I can make the reverb brighter. Now granted, you can do this in a bunch of other reverb plugins, I'm sure, but I just really like how this one does it, especially for this particular song. All right. Next thing I did was I added a doubler plugin. And basically all my doubler plugin was a doubler. And I kind of showed you how I'd use the doubler before the other plugins. But basically what this is going to do is it's going to send out a copy of the vocals that we use. And it's going to just give me a little bit more of a push on the side information as far as just the width of it. So the way I accomplish this is I add the doubler plugin with the basic doubler preset, but I also add a S1 imager to kind of spread that out a little bit so that it pushes them to the side. And so what I'll do is I'll bring this all the way down and bring it up. Check out what the doubler plugin does. So when you listen to it, you notice like, yo, I kind of feel like the sides, I didn't realize it could be pushed out that far. You feel like it kind of comes up on the sides of your headphones or on your speakers. And it just adds a little bit more of a more stereo feel to your background vocals without really interrupting the sonics of what they just originally sound like. And this is a really dope trick that I even try on my lead vocals. Shh, don't tell anyone. And it really just adds a stereo kind of feeling to whatever vocal that you're working on. All right, let's put that back. The last thing that I'm going to show you as far as the effects processing is this. It's a delay. And basically, I used a quarter note delay. And the quarter note delay is basically adding a little bit of a, I guess you could say, tail as well. And I'm using these Echo Boys. Let me show you exactly what it sounds like. I'm going to bring this down. So that's pretty evident. You can hear it. It's that ooh. It's kind of adding a little bit more of this tail and this bounce to the vocal that helps it feel more realistic. And this is important. This is what I always say as far as creating these vocal spaces and mixing your vocals. What I'm really trying to accomplish is making them sound realistic as far as what the emotion is of what I'm trying to bring out of the entire thing. That's my biggest takeaway for it. And the last thing you keep in mind is to blend your harmonies. Now that you've mixed everything and kind of have this sound as you were listening back and forth with the music, that's what you should have been doing. Now you're basically just blending your mids with your lows, with your highs, and finding the right balance, and thus accomplishing a sound like this. So guys, that was my tutorial on some pro tips to basically mixing your background vocals. I really hope that was helpful. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Also, make sure you follow us at HelpMeDevvon on Instagram. And also make sure you visit helpmedevvon.com at any time to get some of our vocal chains and templates to keep this channel going and to support us. Make sure also that you follow our Discord community as well to get a bunch of engineers and meet them and to pick up game and share information like we always do. So I hope you guys enjoyed that tutorial. Please let me know in the comments below anything you wanted to see or any question you have. And until next time, you guys.